My name is Megan Calloway, and I was 15 years old the night my parents threw me out into a storm and nearly lost me forever. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a gray-blue house on Alameda Street in the Northeast, the kind of neighborhood where the streets are lined with old oaks and every yard has a rain garden because the Pacific Northwest doesn't let you forget where you are. We had a porch with a swing, a kitchen that always smelled like coffee, and a family that looked, from the outside, like the kind you'd see in a catalog. My parents, Frank and Diane Calloway, were decent people in the way that a lot of decent people are. Good enough most of the time, but not good enough when it actually counted. My father managed a hardware distribution warehouse out near the airport. My mother worked part-time at a dental office in Selwood and spent the rest of her time managing our household with the focused intensity of someone who needed everything to appear fine. My older sister, Rachel, was 17 and had been the sun around which our family orbited for as long as I could remember. She was pretty in an obvious way, loud where I was quiet, charming in rooms where I disappeared. She knew how to make my parents laugh. She knew how to make them worry. And she knew, with the particular genius of a certain kind of older sibling, exactly how to make them turn against me. Rachel had been lying about me for years. Small lies at first, the kind that were easy to dismiss when I tried to correct them. She'd tell Mom I'd borrowed her clothes without asking. She'd tell Dad I'd been disrespectful while he was at work. She'd tell their friends I'd said something unkind about them. Each lie was small enough that defending myself made me look defensive, and protesting made me look guilty. By the time I was 14, they believed her reflexively. I'd become, in my own home, the difficult one. The dramatic one. The one who was always causing problems. Rachel had constructed this version of me so carefully, over so many years, that it had its own structural integrity. It held up under examination because it had been built with such patience. I want you to understand that I wasn't a perfect kid. I was moody sometimes, withdrawn, the way 15-year-olds are when the world feels too big and their own skin feels wrong. I got average grades. I didn't have a lot of friends at Wilson High School, where I was a sophomore that year. I read too much and talked too little and probably seemed strange to people who didn't know me well. But I wasn't what Rachel made me out to be. The lie she told that October night was the biggest one. I don't know what made her do it, whether it was opportunism or genuine cruelty or some private war she was waging that I didn't fully understand. What I know is what happened. I'd been sick for 3 days. Not dramatically sick, just a nagging fever and exhaustion that had kept me home from school since Monday. My mother had taken me to the urgent care on Burnside on Tuesday, where they'd said it was probably a viral thing, told us to keep an eye on it, sent us home with instructions to rest and push fluids. I'd spent 2 days in bed watching it rain against my window and sleeping and feeling that peculiar floaty disconnection that comes with a persistent fever. By Thursday evening I was feeling worse, not better. My head hurt behind my eyes. I was cold even under 2 blankets. The fever had climbed, and I felt strange in a way that was different from regular sick, a way I didn't have words for yet. Rachel told my parents I'd faked the whole thing. She told them that Thursday evening while I was upstairs in my room, that she'd seen me downstairs the night before eating chips and watching TV and laughing, that I'd been perfectly fine all along and was just avoiding school because of some drama with a girl in my friend group. She told them I'd admitted it to her. She made up specifics, named a real girl from my school as the supposed source of the drama. She was so specific and so certain that there was nothing that looked like a lie about any of it. My mother came upstairs at 7:30. I was in bed, the room dim, my head pounding. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and said, "Get up. You're not sick." "Mom, I really don't feel," Rachel told us what's been going on. "I'm not angry, I just need you to be honest with me." "I am being honest. I have a fever. I've had one for 3 days. You were fine last night." "I wasn't downstairs last night. I've been up here since Tuesday. You can check the Megan." Her voice had that particular flatness that meant she'd already decided. "I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the dramatics. Your sister doesn't make things up. My father appeared behind her in the hallway. I tried again, tried to explain, tried to sound calm instead of desperate, but I could hear myself how it sounded. Like exactly what Rachel had described. Like a teenage girl caught in a lie, scrambling. My father said, "Get your things. You can stay at Grandma Betty's tonight." "Dad, I'm sick. I have a fever right now. You can feel my forehead, leave." His voice was flat. I don't need a sick daughter who isn't actually sick. I need honesty, and right now I'm not getting it from you. Those words. I've turned them over in my mind 1,000 times in the years since. I don't need a sick daughter. I don't know if he understood what he was saying. I don't know if he meant it the way it landed. I got up. I don't know why I didn't fight harder, why I didn't demand a thermometer, why I didn't say more. Maybe the fever was already doing something to my thinking. Maybe 15 years of being the disbelieved one had worn something down in me. I put on jeans and a sweatshirt over my pajamas, picked up my backpack, and walked out of the house. It was October in Portland, which means it was raining. Not the soft Pacific drizzle that locals claim to love, but a real storm, the kind that comes in off the ocean and means business. The temperature was maybe 48 degrees. I stood on the porch for a moment and looked at the rain hammering the street and thought about where to go. Grandma Betty lived in St. John's, about 40 minutes away by bus. I didn't have my phone charger and my phone was at 12%. I didn't have enough cash for an Uber. The bus would take me close but not all the way in this weather. I started walking toward the bus stop on Fremont Street. The rain soaked through my sweatshirt within 2 minutes. I was shivering, which I'd been doing even in my warm bed, so outside in 48-degree rain and wet clothes it felt like my bones were vibrating. My head was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I made it to the bus stop. I sat on the bench under the small shelter and watched the rain and waited. The number 8 came and I got on and sat in the back and put my head against the cool window and tried to think clearly. I got off 2 stops early because I thought the fresh air would help. That was probably the fever thinking. I started walking and I was maybe 4 blocks from the stop when my legs stopped working correctly. Not all at once, just a gradual wrongness, like the instructions from my brain to my feet were getting lost somewhere in the middle. I sat down on a bus bench on Lombard Street. I remember the street light above me and the rain coming down through it and thinking I should call someone. I got my phone out. 8%. I called my best friend Amber, who lived in Beaverton, too far to help but the only person I could think of. No answer. I don't remember what happened next in any ordered way. I remember being very cold. I remember lying down on the bench because sitting up was too much work. I remember a face above me, a man in a rain jacket, saying something I couldn't parse. I remember the inside of an ambulance, bright and loud. I woke up at Providence Portland Medical Center on Glisson Street, in a room with a window that showed nothing but dark sky and rain. There were tubes in my arm and a monitor beeping beside me and a nurse adjusting something near my bed. The nurse's name was Deb. She had a round face and reading glasses on a chain around her neck and the particular competent calm of someone who has seen a lot of things and is not easily rattled. "Hey," she said when she saw my eyes open. "There you are. What happened?" I asked. My voice came out strange, scraped thin. "You were found unconscious on Lombard Street," she said. "You have bacterial meningitis. Do you know what that is?" I didn't, not really. I'd heard the word but it meant nothing to me at 15. "It's an infection of the membranes around your brain and spinal cord," she said, in a tone that was matter-of-fact but not cold. "It's serious, but you came in when we could still treat it. You're going to be okay. But you gave us a scare." The police had gone through my backpack to find identification. They'd called my parents from the number on an emergency card I kept in my wallet, a thing my mother had made me write out and carry since 6th grade. I'd been in the hospital for about 2 hours, hooked to an 4-drip of antibiotics, when my father walked in. I heard him before I saw him, his voice in the hallway asking a nurse which room. Then the door opened and he was there, in his work jacket, rain still on his shoulders, and he stopped when he saw me. His hands were shaking. I noticed that first, before anything else. My father, who prided himself on steadiness, who never showed distress in any visible way, was standing in the doorway of a hospital room with his hands shaking at his sides. "Why?" He started, and stopped. His face was doing something I'd never seen it do. "You can't be here. We just—" "I know," I said. He sat down in the chair beside my bed very slowly, the way people sit when their legs aren't entirely reliable. He looked at the tubes in my arm. He looked at the monitor. He looked at my face, which I knew was pale and wrong-looking because I'd caught a glimpse of myself in the dark window. "How bad?" he asked, to no one in particular. "Bacterial meningitis," I said. "They said I got here in time." He put his face in his hands. My mother arrived 20 minutes later. She stood in the doorway and made a sound I'd never heard from her, something wordless and broken, and then she crossed the room and took my hand and held it so tight it hurt a little, and I didn't say anything about that. Rachel didn't come that night. I learned later that she'd stayed home, that my parents had left her there when the hospital called. I don't know what she was thinking during those hours. I've never asked her. Some questions don't have answers that would help. I was in Providence, Portland for 11 days. Bacterial meningitis is not a quick thing to recover from even when you're 15 and otherwise healthy, and caught it before it progressed to the worst it can be. I had headaches that felt like pressure from the inside out. I had light sensitivity that meant the curtains in my room stayed closed most of the time. I had days when I was mostly myself and days when the world felt like it was happening at a remove, like I was watching it through frosted glass. My parents were there every day. Both of them. My father took 2 weeks off work. My mother rearranged her entire schedule. They sat with me through the dull hours of an 11-day hospitalization, watching bad cable TV, taking turns getting food from the cafeteria, being there in the particular way that people are when they understand they almost weren't. We didn't talk about what had happened, not directly, not during those 11 days. There was an implicit understanding that the hospital room was not the place for that conversation. But it was there, in the room with us, every hour of every one of those days. The conversation happened about 2 weeks after I came home. I was still in recovery, still having headaches, still sleeping more than normal. I was sitting at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning drinking tea because coffee still didn't appeal to me, and my parents sat down across from me and my father said, "We need to talk about that night." I waited. "We were wrong," he said. Just that, plain and flat, the way he said things when he meant them most. "We were wrong to send you out. We were wrong to believe what Rachel told us without checking. We were wrong in a way that could have." He stopped. "That almost, I know," I said. My mother said, "I'm sorry, Megan. I am so sorry." She was crying, which was not something my mother did in front of people if she could help it. I looked at them across the kitchen table, these two people I'd spent 15 years trying to reach, and I felt something complex and true that I couldn't simplify into either forgiveness or anger. It was both things at once, and other things too. "Why did you always believe her?" I asked. "Why did it never occur to you that she might be lying?" My father was quiet for a moment. "Because she was so certain," he said. "And because it was easier to believe the explanation that required less conflict." That was more honest than I expected. I gave him credit for it. "I need you to actually see me," I said. "Not the version Rachel built. Me." "We're going to try," my mother said. "If you'll let us." I let them. Rachel and I had a different conversation, months later, one I initiated. I'm not going to pretend it was cinematic or that she broke down and confessed to everything. What she said was something like, I didn't think it would go that far. Which is not an apology and not an explanation, and is probably the most honest thing she could have said. What I told her was, I know you don't think of yourself as someone who would hurt me. But you did. And I need you to understand that. She heard it. Whether she fully absorbed it, I can't say. But she heard it. I'm 23 now. I live in the Hawthorne neighborhood of Portland, in an apartment on 34th with a small balcony where I grow tomatoes in the summer that mostly don't survive the Portland climate but keep me optimistic. I'm finishing my last year at Portland State University, studying psychology, which surprised everyone including me. But it turns out that growing up feeling misunderstood gives you a particular interest in how people build narratives about each other and themselves, how we decide who someone is, and how hard it is to revise that decision. My parents and I have a real relationship now. Not a perfect one, not the relationship I would have designed if I'd had the option, but a real one. My father apologizes for things now, which 8 years ago he didn't know how to do. My mother checks in on me with a regularity that sometimes feels like guilt and sometimes feels like love, and is probably both at once. Rachel lives in Seattle. We see each other at holidays. It's careful and sometimes uncomfortable and occasionally almost warm. I don't trust her completely, and I don't think I'm obligated to. But she's my sister, and I've learned that you can hold complicated feelings about a person and still choose to stay connected to them. The nurse from that first night, Deb, I looked her up 2 years ago and sent her a card through the hospital. I don't know if she got it. I don't know if she remembered me out of the hundreds of patients she must have seen. But I wanted her to know that the girl on Lombard Street made it. I made it. That's the whole story, really. I was thrown out into a storm at 15, by people who loved me but failed me, and I ended up in a hospital bed with meningitis and tubes in my arm and a father standing in the doorway with shaking hands, unable to understand how we'd arrived there. And from that night forward, something shifted. Not everything, not all at once, not without pain and backsliding and hard conversations and long stretches of working it out. But something real shifted, in my family and in me. I stopped being the disbelieved one. I started being seen. It took a storm and a hospital and 11 days of curtains-drawn recovery and a lot of years of patient, difficult work. But it happened. And I'm still here to say so. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being disbelieved by the people who are supposed to know you best. It's different from regular loneliness, different from missing someone or feeling left out. It's the loneliness of being present and invisible at the same time, of existing in a family and not existing in it, of speaking and not being heard. I lived in that loneliness for years before I had a name for it. I thought it was something wrong with me, something in my nature that made me fundamentally less believable, less real, less worthy of the benefit of the doubt. Rachel was so confident. I was so uncertain. And confidence reads as truth to people who aren't paying close attention. What I understand now, studying psychology at Portland State, is that what happened in my family is not unusual. Not the severity of it, the meningitis on Lombard Street, that part was unusual. But the pattern of a child who learns to perform certainty being believed over a child who tells the truth with uncertainty, that is common. That is a human thing, a failure of attention that happens in loving families and broken ones and everything in between. Understanding it doesn't erase it. But it makes it something I can work with instead of something I'm buried under. I've talked about that night in therapy, with Dr. Ewan at the counseling center on campus, who has the patience of someone who has genuinely heard it all and still manages to seem like your particular story matters. I've talked about Rachel and my parents and the bus stop on Fremont Street and lying down on a bench on Lombard because sitting up was too much work. I've talked about waking up in Providence, Portland with tubes in my arm and Deb's reading glasses on their chain and the dark window full of rain. What I've arrived at, slowly and imperfectly, is something like this. The people who hurt you are usually not monsters. They are people who failed at a crucial moment, who let laziness or fear or misplaced loyalty override their better judgment. That doesn't make the failure smaller. It makes it more complicated to live with, Because you can't resolve it with simple anger. You have to hold the whole truth. That they failed you, and that they are also people you love, and that both of those things are permanently true. My father's hands were shaking in that doorway. I think about that a lot. The shaking hands of a man who had just understood what he'd done. That image is the one I return to when the story of that night tries to become only a story of abandonment. Because it's also a story of a man standing in a doorway, shaking, understanding too late and showing up anyway. It's a story about the limits of people and the moments when those limits reveal something true about who they are underneath the failures. My family failed me. My family also drove through a Portland storm to get to a hospital room on Glisson Street and held my hand too tight and sat through 11 days of bad cable TV and bad cafeteria coffee to be there when I woke up with a headache behind my eyes. Both things are my story. I'm not willing to give up either one. I'm going to be a therapist. That's the plan, the graduate program application sitting on my laptop, the letters of recommendation coming from professors who know what I've been building toward. I want to work with adolescents, specifically, kids who are navigating family systems that can't see them clearly, kids who are living in that particular loneliness I know from the inside. I want to be the person in the room who believes them. Who says, without needing proof, without requiring them to earn it. I hear you. You're real. What you're experiencing is real. That's what I needed at 15. That's what most people need, at 15 or 45 or any age. To be seen without having to perform the scene for someone else first. The rain in Portland tonight is the soft kind, the drizzle that comes down so fine it barely counts. I'm at my kitchen table with tea and my laptop and my slightly too optimistic tomato plants visible through the balcony door. It's a quiet Thursday evening in October, which is either ironic or just the way time moves in circles sometimes. I'm 23. I'm okay. I'm more than okay, most days. My name is Megan Calloway. When I was 15, my parents threw me out in a storm. 3 hours later, police called them to a hospital on Glisson Street. My father walked through the door with shaking hands. And somehow, from that terrible starting point, we found our way to something real. I'm still here. That's enough.